Valar Dohaeris is the third season premiere of the HBO fantasy television series Game of Thrones, and the 21st episode of the series. Written by executive producers David Benioff and D. Weiss, and directed by Daniel Minahan, it aired on March 31, 2013. The premiere continues where the second season left off, with the Lannisters consolidating their power at King's Landing in the aftermath of the Battle of the Blackwater. Meanwhile, Jon Snow meets the king beyond the wall, and Daenerys leaves Qarth for Slaver's Bay. The episode's title translates to All Men Must Serve in the High Valyrian language in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire novels, which the series adapts. The title mirrors that of Season 2's finale, Valar Morpholis All Men Must Die. The episode received mostly positive reviews, set a new ratings record for the series, and was one of the most pirated episodes for an HBO series. Plot: Beyond the Wall, the episode opens shortly after White Walkers have attacked the Night's Watch force and left only a small number of survivors. During a subsequent blizzard, Samwell Tarly is attacked by a White, but is saved by the direwolf Ghost and Lord Commander Jamormont. The Lord Commander reprimands Samwell for failing to send ravens south to warn of the incoming army and orders the survivors to head back to the wall. Jon Snow, still a prisoner of Ygritte and the Wheatlings, arrives at the Wheatling camp and is escorted to meet with Mance Rayder. When brought to his tent, Jon initially mistakes Tormund Giantsbane for the king beyond the wall, but Mance reveals himself to Jon and questions Jonah unregistered trademark's motives for deserting the Night's Watch. Jon earns Mance's approval by describing his horror and disgust after discovering that Craster gave his baby sons to the White Walkers, and that the Lord Commander knew but did nothing. In King's Landing, newly knighted Ser Bronn has returned to Tyrion's service, for a much higher fee. Tyrion, who has been scarred since the Battle of Blackwater, has been shut in recluse ever since his father arrived to take the glory for the defeat of Stannis' unregistered trademark army. Tyrion's sister, Cersei, visits Tyrion and questions what he will say to their father. When Tyrion meets with Lord Tywin, who has taken over the role of Hand of the King, Tywin reluctantly agrees to Tyrion's request for recognition of his accomplishments during the Battle of Blackwater. However, when pressed by Tyrion to name him heir to Casterly Rock, the Lannister ancestral home, Tywin refuses, and viciously insults Tyrion, calling him an embarrassment and a penance that he must suffer. Petyr Baelish approaches Sansa Stark, who is still being accompanied by she. Petyr informs Sansa that he is in negotiations to take a role that would remove him from King's Landing. He offers to smuggle her out if Sansa can keep quiet about the plan. Roz is careful to tell she to watch out for Sansa's well-being, especially when dealing with Lord Baelish. King Joffrey and Lady Margaery travel through Flea Bottom in a caravan where the lady stops and exits her litter and goes to an orphanage to comfort the children. Joffrey, meanwhile, hides in his litter with the windows shut. At dinner with the Tyrells and Cersei, Joffrey trades veiled insults with his mother. In Blackwater Bay and at Dragoonstone, Davos is stranded on a rock in the bay outside King unregistered trademark's landing after his ship was destroyed in the Battle of Blackwater Bay. He is picked up by a ship belonging to his old friend, the pirate Salad Hassan. Davos recounts seeing his son, Maethos, die. Saladwa tells Davos that Stannis is in seclusion at Dragoonstone, and that Melisandre is burning people alive at his castle and she is the only one with whom Stannis will speak. Davos convinces Saladwa to drop him off there, intending to stop Melisandre influencing Stannis by assassinating her. He is given an audience with Stannis where he is shocked to discover his king and friend is indifferent to his survival and refuses to send Melisandre away. Melisandre insinuates to Davos that it is his fault the battle was lost, since he convinced Stannis to leave her behind and thus prevented Melisandre from using her magic to influence the battle's outcome. When she mentions his son, Davos loses his temper and tries to attack her, though the guards restrain him and Stannis orders him thrown in the dungeons. At Harrenhal, Robb Stark has arrived at Harrenhal, where he wishes to fight Lannister troops. Upon entering the castle, however, it is discovered that Gregor Clegane has abandoned it and slaughtered all the prisoners. Roose Bolton gives sympathy to a still-grieving Lord Karstark who expresses his frustration that Catelyn Stark let Jaime Lannister go. Bolton assures Karstark that Jaime will be found soon, as his best hunter is after them. Robb stumbles across a survivor among the dead, a man named Qbun. Across the narrow sea, with her dragons growing fast, Daenerys has arrived at Astapor and Slava, a unregistered trademark S-Bay, and is considering buying renowned eunuch slave soldiers, the Unsullied. She and Ser Jorah witness a brutal demonstration of their fortitude, but Daenerys is horrified to hear of the gruesome training they endure. Upon walking throughout a nearby market, a warlock, masked as a young girl, attempts to assassinate Daenerys with a scorpion-like creature. He is thwarted by a cloaked Barristan Selmy, previous Kingsguard to her father, who swears his allegiance to her. Production, writing: the episode was written by showrunners David Benioff and D. Weiss. It is based mainly on the first chapters of A Storm of Swords, the third novel in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. Some of the twists that open the third book were used in last season's finale. Conversely, Barristan Selmy saving Daenerys from the Manticore was borrowed from her last chapter in the second book, A Clash of Kings. Casting: Valar Dohaeris introduces the Irish actor Ciara N. Hinds as the Wheedling leader and Night's Watch deserter Mance Rayder, one of the latest Season 3 roles to be cast. The producers explained that casting Mance was a great challenge because he was someone who had become king beyond the wall not by birthright but by convincing all the tribes to unite under his leadership. They had to find an actor with the charisma required to portray this. Unusual for a production such as Game of Thrones, the first scene Hinds filmed was the first one where his character appears, the meeting with Jon Snow at his tent. The season premiere also marks the first appearance of guest stars Christopher Hivu as the Wheedling Tormund Giantsbane, Nathalie Emanuel as the slave Missandei, and Anton Lesser as the wounded prisoner Qbun. The three castings were announced at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2012. After being absent for the entire second season, Ian Mailhenney returns as Ser Barristan Selmy. Actor Ian White, previously cast as a White Walker in the first season, was recast as the huge Ser Gregor Clegane in the second and appears in the episode as the giant seen in the Wheedlings' camp. Valyrian: David J. Peterson, who created the Dothraki language for the first season of the show, was entrusted by the producers to design a new constructed language to depict Valyrian, the tongue of the fallen Valyrian Empire. After immersing himself in the fictional background, Peterson ended devising two languages, High Valyrian, the oldest form that was spoken at the height of the Empire and that in its purest form still exists as a language of scholarship and refinement, and the Slavers Bay variety of Low Valyrian, a creolized version that is spoken in local dialects around the Slavers Bay. The relationship between the two languages would be similar to the one between Classical Latin and Roman languages. To translate sentences in Low Valyrian such as the ones spoken by Cras Monacles and Missandei during the episode, Peterson would first write them into High Valyrian, and then apply a series of phonological, semantic and grammatical changes to the text. Filming locations: the production continued to use the Paint Hall Studios in Belfast for most interior shoots. The scene of Daenerys at sea was filmed at the Linen Mill Film and Television Studios at Banbridge, using the same ship built for Theon's arrival in Pike and used as Stannis' flagship in Season 2. The beach of Downhill Strand returned as the island of Dragoonstone. The old city of Dubrovnik was again used for the exterior shots of the capital, King's Landing. Tyrion and Bronn are seen walking on the famed city walls, and the scene where Lord Baelish visits Sansa at the docks was filmed in the old port between Fort Lavrajnak and the Pilar Gates. Also repeating from last season, the scenes beyond the wall were filmed in Iceland. The Wheedlings camp was built in a new location, on a lava field in the Mar 1/2 Eatn Lake region in the north, a few hours from the town of Akureyri. Building the camp took months of work from the art department and weeks of construction by the local crew. Although the scenes at the Icelandic exteriors were filmed at -11°C, the interior of Mance's tent was filmed on one of the soundstages at the Paint Hall. The fires burning inside the tent made the set very hot, and the actors suffered the heat wearing heavy furs designed for Arctic climates. To depict the Slav city of Astapa, the production used the Moroccan city of Essaouira. The Unsullied are introduced in the city ramparts of Scala de la Ville, the 18th-century sea bastion that runs along the northern cliffs, and during the closing scene when Barristan reveals himself, the Genoese-built citadel by the harbour can be clearly seen. Dedication: the episode is dedicated to the memory of cinematographer Martin Kenzie, who had worked in the photography department and died of cancer while the third season was being filmed on July 16, 2012. Reception. Ratings: Valar Dohaeris' first airing was seen by 4.4 million viewers. The total rose to 6.7 million viewers once the two repeats of the night are taken into account. Both figures represented a viewership record for the show. Critical reception: in an advance review for the Daily Beast, Jake LaCobb wrote that the season premiere lacks energy and intensity, but provides a necessary foundation, and that the season, like the novel it is based on, takes a little to get going. Matt Fowler, writing for IGN, gave the episode an 8.6/10, writing that while understandably not showing us everyone, Game of Thrones returned in fine form with dragons, zombies and giants. Neil Adabnath of The Independent felt that Valar Dohaeris was a strong start to Season 3 and deftly picked up the various story strands from the last season. Even if it was just a series of brief check-ins, she also praised the show for taking creative liberties which always pay off in bucket loads, commenting on how this can add to Martina Unregistered trademark S-World and flesh it out in new ways. Forbes.com writer Eric Kane stated he felt Valar Dohaeris did exactly what it needed to do, by bringing the viewers back up to speed on the broader conflict and the various minor character conflicts and positioning for power. The ball hasn't Unregistered trademark T really been moved forward at all, but our feet are on sturdy ground to move forward. He did however express some disappointment over how some elements of the episode differed from its source material in regards to the reintroduction of the character Barristan Selmy and the apparent absence of the character Strong Belwas. Reviewing the episode for The Guardian, Sarah Hughes felt that Valar Dohaeris didn't really feel like a season opener, and that the opening scene was a little disorientating. However, she enjoyed the scenes in King's Landing and lauded Stephen Dillon's brief performance. Commenting on the Darren Rise plot, she felt her storyline was advancing quite quickly. She also felt that the Barristan Selmy reveal was handled well as there are certain conventions that work better on page than screen and the hidden identity trope is one of them. By getting the reveal out of the way early, Benioff and Weiss can concentrate on the potential rivalry between Barristan and Jorah. Accolades: the episode received 2 nominations at the 65th Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Art Direction for a Single Camera Series, Outstanding Prosthetic Makeup for a Series, Miniseries, Movie or a Special, and won the Outstanding Special Visual Effects. References. External links: Valar Dohaeris at HBO.com, Valar Dohaeris at the Internet Movie Database, Valar Dohaeris at TV.com.